Hey, IG Live starting right now, and you know what? I'm gonna tweet about it. I'm gonna IG Live Q&A starting this moment. Ask me anything. Sybiz, economy, love, friendship, hate, anxiety, fear, stress, whatever. Find me at Altucher on IG. Hey everybody, how's it going? Hey, we got Joe, we got Jenna, we got, I can't see, a positive magic scientist, Doberman, another positive magic scientist, Susan Flynn. I wish I could have a big screen so I can actually see the comments. Sometimes it's hard for me to see the comments, but I'm going to try to be a little bit more active. I got myself an iPad, charging it right now. I did not get a haircut, no. Hey Joe, how's it going? Bitcoin. You know, I'm going to talk about Bitcoin for a second because a lot of people have been asking it. And as usual, here's my grief in life is that because I did these Bitcoin ads in 2017, like 3 years ago now, at least once a day, someone mentions on Twitter or emails me or whatever, aren't you the guy with pushing those shit coins about Bitcoin? And the answer is no. I never pushed one single coin that was a scam. My whole point was to recommend the coins that weren't scams. I saw a lot of my readers at the time were using a website called, I'll just be honest about it. I didn't want to make anybody anxious back then, but a lot of my readers were using a website called Steam, and you would get Steam coins when you wrote articles. And I can see, looking at the code, I can see Steam was a scam. So I came up with this idea of a newsletter that would help you avoid the scams. And I went on CNBC in September 2017, recommending Bitcoin. Bitcoin was $3,500. Now it's $10,000. And everyone says now, didn't you call for Bitcoin million? Yes. Bitcoin eventually will get there at some point, maybe. But are you really complaining if you bought Bitcoin at 3,500 and it's at 10,000 now? And meanwhile, the stock market has had all this catastrophe because of the pandemic. Right now, everybody is relieved that Bitcoin exists because it's just in case. Now, I don't think this is going to happen, but just in case there's hyperinflation with the United States dollar, at least we have Bitcoin, which won't have hyperinflation. So Bitcoin right now has been going up because it's the one place where you maybe could put your money and it's relatively safe compared to every place else. Now, I do think the dollar is safe also, but a lot of people are saying hyperinflation. I don't believe that there's going to be hyperinflation, but we'll see. Yes, so there's a halving of Bitcoin happening today, meaning the great thing about Bitcoin is and I'm not going to make this whole thing about Bitcoin, just another 60 more seconds about Bitcoin. The great thing about Bitcoin is there's a limited supply. Once it hits 21 million coins, there will be no more Bitcoin. And so starting today, I believe, the number of Bitcoins printed each day, or not printed, but created each day is going to get cut in half. So usually Bitcoin goes up every time there's a halving. So we'll see. It could be, and it might not be. I don't really think people should buy because of this. I think people should buy because of the long term, what I've discussed on prior IG Lives. By the way, quick announcement. On Wednesday, Chuck Palahniuk, the author of Fight Club, is going to join me on the Instagram Live, and we're going to talk about writing. So, someone's asking a question. Is a newsletter a better idea than an online course? It depends. It depends on how much work you want to do, and it depends on how much money you want to make. I actually think now an online course is better than a newsletter just because it's less work. A lot of the money you make on a newsletter comes from renewals, but I don't think renewals are so big right now because the economy is so up and down. I don't trust renewals. I think an online course, like teaching people doing an online course on side hustles, for instance, or an online course on copywriting, or an online course on creativity, and signing up for a site like Teachable where you can easily create your course, or Coursera or whatever, I think that is much better than an online newsletter. But I think you should build an online newsletter so you have do a free online newsletter to have constant contact with your listeners. I think that's much more important than a pay newsletter. So I would do an online course, but I would do a free email newsletter. And use Substack.com to create your free email newsletter. I used to believe MailChimp, but I tried setting up a newsletter recently with MailChimp, and it was harder than I thought. Whereas Substack, within 5 minutes, I had an online newsletter up and going. So again, I would do an online newsletter, use Highbrow or Teachable or any number of sites. I was an investor in Teachable. It just got sold. And create a course on anything. Create a course on gardening. Create a course on investing. Maybe I'll create a course on investing just so you see, like a basic course, or a course on creativity. I'll do a course on idea sex, or a course on how to travel around the world for less than $100 a day. Do a course on that. So there's also, and then you through the course and through your when you create a course, do a ton of free content. Use Twitter, LinkedIn, Medium, Reddit, Quora. Create a ton of free content so people who know who you are. And then once you have a lot of people following you on Quora or LinkedIn or Twitter, direct them to your online course. Make sure your online course is the best you can possibly do. And then use all of this to direct traffic towards your free email newsletter. Create your newsletter using Substack. So this is a great, if you do nothing else, if you listen to nothing else in any of these IG Lives, create an online course, create a free newsletter, and create a ton of free content on every social media possible. So, consecutive tasking. Well, I'm not a big believer in multitasking. I do think between every big task, you need to rejuvenate. The mind only gets creative when you sit around kind of thinking about nothing, or when you read a book, or you're just in your head letting thoughts fly. So idea sex is when you combine two ideas and make it into a better idea. So an example I talked about last week was the story of Reed Hastings. So Reed Hastings went to Blockbuster. He borrowed the movie Apollo 13. This is like 25 years ago. He borrowed the movie Apollo 13, and he lost it. And so Blockbuster charged them $40 in late fees, and he was really upset. And afterwards, he went to his gym, and he's on the treadmill, and he started thinking, I spend $9 a month to join the gym, and I can use it zero, or I can use it a ton. They never stop me. So Blockbuster plus gyms equals what? Netflix. So Reed Hastings started Netflix and made himself a multi-billionaire. He was a software developer. He had no experience in media. He was an outsider in media. He had no experience in subscription models, but he created this subscription model for renting movies, which turned into its own media empire. And boom, idea sex, gyms plus Blockbuster equals Netflix. He made billions of dollars. So again, idea sex, it's not just about coming up with good ideas. It's about having good idea sex. And so you want to create as many situations in your life as possible where idea sex becomes possible. So sometimes just giving yourself, put it in your calendar a half hour where you're just going to think of ideas. And they'll have sex with each other. And then I write down ideas every day in a waiter's pad. Today I was coming up with ideas for TV shows that 9-year-olds would love. So here's an example of a TV show. Here's an example of one of the things on my idea list that I think a 9-year-old would love. It's called TikTok versus the world. And so you get a bunch of very popular TikTok influencers, like 20 million followers or more, and you have a game like Jeopardy, like a trivia game, and it's the TikTok influencers versus the YouTube influencers. TikTok influencers versus congressmen, TikTok influencers versus billionaires, TikTokers, influencers versus, I don't know, people on Twitter with large, TikTok versus Twitter. So kind of a game show that 9-year-olds would love because they aspire to be TikTok influencers. And then, in between introducing each TikToker, you see them do their dance, or you see them reenact their most popular video, or maybe you watch their most popular video. So I think that would be a fun idea. Do you guys like that idea? So thank you for one like on that idea. Let's see. Tina, he said only do that if you do nothing else. I didn't see Tina's question, so let me. Tina, maybe post your initial question that you were asking, or maybe Jay has it in the IG Live. I haven't clicked on the IG Live link yet. Jay, you have not sent me the IG Live link. Let's see. Don't forget, Jay, please send me the IG Live link. In a little bit, I'm going to give another book challenge. It's called the 101 Book Challenge. And Positive Magic Scientist, thank you for answering Tina's question. Everybody, always feel free to answer anybody's question. But Jay, stop talking about audio equipment on my IG Live and send me the IG Live link, because otherwise we can't get started on Q&A. By the way, interesting thing. I haven't gotten to the BS headline of the day, although I have a couple of good possibilities. And then I'm going to talk about the 101, what I call the 101 Book Challenge. But interesting thing I noticed today is that binoculars is the third most popular gadget for sale on Amazon right now. There's a binocular that's number 3, and there's another binocular that's number 4. And my question is, why are people so obsessed with buying binoculars all of a sudden? Could it be, so a few years ago, I was living from Airbnb to Airbnb to Airbnb. I threw out all my belongings. I had kind of a very unpleasant divorce in 2015. I didn't want to rent an apartment anymore. I didn't want to own. I didn't want to go to the hassle of renting again, but I didn't know what to do. So I threw out all of my belongings. If Lisa's on the IG Live, she's the one who threw them all out. I threw out all of my belongings, and I started living in Airbnbs. And I forgot the reason I brought it up. Oh yeah. I always had a dream, a kind of a weird fetish, that, every Airbnb I was in, I had another set of windows I was staring into. And I wished I had a binocular. I only had the belongings in my carry-on bag. I didn't have any other belongings with me. And I wish I'd had a binocular, because I always wanted to see if I could spy on two people potentially having sex. And not once in hundreds of Airbnbs did I ever find someone having sex. But I could see with all this lockdown why binoculars are so popular, because it really, in hotels, I've put the glass against the wall in the middle of the night, and I have heard people. One time, I remember, this was in the W in LA, and I put the glass against the wall. I definitely heard two people having sex, and within the wall, if they're on the other side of the wall, they're only 2 feet away from you. But of course, you could only hear it with the glass against the wall. The next morning, by coincidence, we were all going outside of our rooms at the same time. He was over 7 foot tall. He was a professional basketball player, and she was like 4'11". So it was an interesting combination to see. But that's the only time I've ever had this experience, and I could see why people would buy binoculars. But I unfortunately do not have any binoculars. Another thing I noticed in the news that's a little disturbing, and we talked a little bit about this last week. Someone says New York City needs new leadership now. I agree. New York City does need new leadership. New York City, like de Blasio, I'm very apolitical. I don't really care about most politics. But New York City is an important city, and I think de Blasio has kind of ruined the city. So a good friend of mine is running for mayor, Eric Adams. He's the Brooklyn Borough president. You could see my podcast with him, or he was just on the History Hyenas podcast, and it was a hilarious podcast. So listen to the the History Hyenas podcast with Eric Adams. He's the Brooklyn Borough president. If all the boroughs of New York City were cities by themselves, Brooklyn would be the third largest city in the United States after LA, Chicago, and then there would be Brooklyn. So Eric Adams won Brooklyn with 91% of the vote. I hope he becomes mayor in next year when there's the election. But yes, so there was news this weekend, more and more news that children are getting a virus and it's connected. Getting a mysterious infection connected to coronavirus. This is the BS. This is one of 3 BS headlines of the day. And it was on CNN. CNN, you used to be unbiased. I used to watch CNN like 20 years ago. I used to like CNN. CNN, you are the worst piece of shit news network I have ever seen. And I'm pitching a show to CNN right now. And so CNN executives, if you're on this IG Live, I don't even give a shit if you can't not take on my TV show. You are the worst. And I don't even really say this lightly. So everybody gets scared. Oh my God. Someone said to me yesterday, oh my gosh, kids are getting this weird infection with coronavirus. I just saw it on CNN. And the headline's still there. The answer is that the news story is a lie. They just lie. You click on the article, and what it is kids are getting something called Kawasaki syndrome, which is an infection or a virus or whatever that 5,000 kids a year die from it in the U.S. and it happens around now. So it's just coincidence that coronavirus and Kawasaki syndrome kind of happen around this time of year, or Kawasaki. And they even say in the article, a doctor says, this is probably not connected to coronavirus at all. We do not think it's connected to coronavirus. They say that in the article. So why is the headline, mystery syndrome caught by kids suspiciously linked to coronavirus? There's no suspicion and there's no mystery syndrome. It's Kawasaki syndrome. It's not a mystery, and it's not suspicious, and it's not connected to coronavirus. CNN, please stop lying. Do not lie. Maybe Fox News is worse. Maybe MSNBC is worse. What I'm trying to do here is give you headlines and news that matters. So in general, I will say this. In general, no news matters. Like if you had a choice between reading a good book and reading the news, you should always choose to read a book. And I'll tell you why. Here's another headline today on CNN. Tyra Banks, I'll read the exact headline. Where is CNN? Come on, CNN. Do me right. CNN. Tyra Banks responds to America's Next Top Model backlash. She responds, oh my God, what's going on with Tyra Banks and America's Next Top Model? I have to know. So, just as a little bit of a introduction to Tyra Banks and America's Next Top Model, America's Next Top Model is one of the most successful TV shows in the world. It's 31 or 32 seasons. It's syndicated in, 100 countries around the world. And it's a result of, I'm going to say it, Tyra Banks had idea sex, and it was nasty. And what she did was she said her career was over. She was already too old to be a model. She was like 25 years old or something. She was too old to be a model. And she said, well, I know how to be a supermodel. I know how to be America's top model. And I love the show American Idol. What happens if you combine modeling with American Idol? She specifically did that. She told me on my podcast. I have a podcast with Tyra Banks where she says this. She pitched it to her agent. She pitched it to her manager. Everyone said, Tyra, why don't you just enjoy post-modeling life? Let the heavy lifting let us do the heavy lifting in the entertainment world. You don't need, that's a bad idea. So she went straight to producing the show instead, and she created the most popular show on the planet. And so congratulations, Tyra. And now, the headline today, America's Next Top Model has a backlash. Because guess what? 20 years ago, she would give advice that sounds like body shaming today. Like she said to one model who had a gap in her teeth, she said, girl, if you think the Gap is going to give you a $15 million a year contract when you have a gap in your mouth, you have another thing coming. You need dental surgery. And so people are criticizing this one thing she said, and it became this huge backlash. I don't even know where it was a huge backlash. It was a huge backlash in the CNN bathrooms, I guess, because I never even heard of this. And so they asked Tyra Banks for her comment, and Tyra Banks said, yeah, I agree with that. I shouldn't have said that. That's the end of the story. That should not have been an article on the front page of CNN. It should have been a tweet from Tyra Banks' best case. It should not have been an entire story on I don't even know, what to make, how to make, like we should come up with acronyms for CNN. I know some people call it the Chinese News Network. I don't call it that. It's even dumber than that. So, and I don't think that's fair to Chinese news to compare CNN to that. CNN is much worse. And but anyway, why they even have that on the front page? That's the second BS headline of the day. The first one was the suspicious, mysterious syndrome. The second one is America's Next Top Model backlash. Let me just put it this way. Nobody I know is sitting around saying, boy, we better backlash against America's Next Top Model. That's just not happening. I just want to say about Tyra Banks, thank you, Tyra, because after the podcast, one of my daughters was going through something very personal to her. She was going through an illness. She was about to go checked into the hospital for a week. And I asked Tyra to make a video, sending her a message. And I said, I'm going to put it also on Instagram as a story. And, on Instagram, it can't be more than 60 seconds. So Tyra Banks is such a pro. She grabbed my phone and she did a 60-second message to my daughter, and it was so beautiful. My daughter was crying when she saw it, and it was 59.8 seconds on the dot. That's how much of a pro Tyra Banks is. So Tyra Banks is the best. So I hate any article criticizing her because I think she's a good person and she's very talented, very creative. She made a great show, and the show was created using idea sex. So that's the second of 3 BS headlines of the day. Let me see. Did Jay send me questions yet? Because I have more comments. Link for IG Live. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay. I really appreciate it. You can now talk about audio equipment or gaming or whatever you want. How long would I stay at each Airbnb? Good question. I would stay anywhere from 1 day to 3 months. One time I did stay 3 months at an Airbnb, and it's interesting because it's like you're living someone else's life. Like this Airbnb I stayed 3 months at, everything in the apartment was red, and he was obsessed with red planes. There would be models of red planes everywhere, and there would be pictures of his son playing with red planes. And I would Google him, and I could not figure out how this guy made his money. What was very weird on Airbnb is I could never, very much was the case, I could never figure out who people were, that they had, how they made their money. Like this person, he owned this huge apartment, and then he told me he owned another huge apartment in Soho, and then he owned this house. He showed me pictures of it. It was like a mansion in the Bahamas. He owned another mansion in France. And I would Google him, and I could never, and I the only thing I would see is he was married to someone at some point who was like 30 years younger than him, but I don't think they were married anymore. And I could never figure out how these people made money. I do think what I began to realize, there are a lot of people out there, like millions of people out there who have an enormous amount of money, and you don't know how they got it. Like maybe he got it from some drug deal when he was in his 20s. Maybe his ancestors from the 1200s had it in ancient Germany or France or England or Italy. Like there's all this like weird quasi-royalty all over the world, and they all know each other. They all travel in the same circles, and they all have tens of millions of dollars or trusts with tens of millions of dollars. And you'll just never hear about them. I couldn't find anything about him on Google other than he was married to somebody who was 30 years younger than him. So you would see some social parties where they would be photographed. And all I know about him is he was obsessed with red planes and the color red. And so I stayed there for 3 months at an Airbnb, and that was actually right before I moved into an actual apartment. I was doing stand-up comedy, and I decided I needed an apartment right across the street from my favorite comedy club, which I ended up buying. So that was how stand-up started, or that's how I started staying in my own apartment. And I had no belongings in my apartment. I had a nice apartment that I rented, and I remember I wanted to rent an apartment in this one building, and the real estate agent said, "Oh, that building's horrible. Let me show you 10 other buildings." And I said, No. I know exactly what apartment I want, and I know the building. And he's like, we can't even see that apartment right now. It's closed for the day. And I said, just make an offer on this one apartment. I don't care. And he's like, just let me show you other apartments. And I said, no. And so he made the offer, sight unseen. I said, don't negotiate. He didn't listen to me. He did negotiate, and he got the price down. But he got me the apartment I want, and I moved into it, and I was right across the street from the stand-up comedy club that I love to perform in, or that I did love to perform in, until a little virus happened, and now nobody performs there. Nobody performs anymore at all. And so, how to reduce or waive off loans. Let's talk about that. How to get rid of loans. First off, hey, Sanchez Films, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to IG Live. Bobby Axelrod for mayor of New York City. So you guys know I was the technical advisor on season 3 of Billions, so I was very familiar with everything there. Great written show. Okay, how do you get rid of loans? So here's what I would do. There's several types of loans. There's loans between friends, and in that case, it's ethical. You should always pay back your friends. Maybe if you're having financial trouble, you work things out. Maybe you give some collateral, whatever. But one friend, I've talked about this before here. I had a friend who I lent $10,000 to. He did not return the loan, and he forgot about it. I asked him about it several years. I helped him make money. I described here before how I helped him make money. I helped him make $200,000, and I said, now you can pay me back the $10,000. He said, what $10,000? And I had to remind him, and he's like, well, if you say so, I believe you, but I don't remember lending you $10,000. And I stopped talking. I never spoke to him again after that conversation. If someone's going to be unethical, life is too short. You don't want to spend time with them. But ethics do not come into play in mortgages, in credit card loans, in student loans, and in other kinds of debt. So with mortgages, don't forget right now, in the stimulus package, there's a 180-day forbearance, meaning you don't have to pay back your mortgage now for 180 days, but it's going to add up, and you're going to have fees and penalties. So as long as you're okay with that, don't pay back your mortgage right now. And in many cities, I don't know if it's the whole United States, you're not allowed to be evicted during this period. So if you're having financial difficulties, like if you lost your job and you're not getting unemployment and you're in financial stress, do not pay back your mortgage now, because it's not against the law to not pay back your mortgage. But here's the other thing. I think you should, not in every case, but if you're having financial stress, or if you'd like to figure out your life out, or if you'd like to just change direction in life, just stop paying your mortgage, period. So here's what happens. You stop paying your mortgage, and now remember, you have 180 days. So that's 6 months, starting in March, starting at the end of March or beginning of April. That's 6 months. You don't have to pay your mortgage for the end of the year. And then what you should do, just don't pay your mortgage after that. So at that point, the banks are going to have so much trouble catching up with all the people who owe mortgages. They're going to lose track of you a little bit. And in any case, it typically takes them 18 months. They'll start warning you, and then you can work out a plan, and then you stop paying that. But it takes, the average time it takes a bank to foreclose on your house is 18 months. So from this point right now, you could have almost 2 years of living in your house without paying a single dime if you stop paying back the mortgage. Now, your credit rating is going to be horrible, but I'll get to that in a second. If you stop paying back your mortgage, if you don't pay your mortgage right now, yes, the bank will be hurt, but the bank won't be hurt so badly, and I'll tell you why. First off, let me just address the ethics of not paying back your mortgage. It is not unethical to not pay back your mortgage. You have a contract with the bank. And in the contract, it says you have two choices. One choice is to pay the mortgage for 30 years, and then you own your home. Unless you stop paying property taxes, in which case you don't own your home. The government owns your home. But forgetting about that, you have the contract with the bank says either pay your mortgage, or, by the way, in the contract, you're allowed to not pay your mortgage, and then the bank has the right to foreclose on your house. So it's not ethics at all. You have a contract which even includes the provision, I might not pay back my mortgage. And you agree, yes, if I don't pay back my mortgage, the bank can seize my house. But it doesn't mean they have to seize it day one. Doesn't mean you leave your house. It takes, again, it could take anywhere from 3 months to 30 months. On average, it'll take 18 months. You might want to get a lawyer. It'll take 18 months for the bank to foreclose on your house. And so that means, again, from this point here, it'll take 2 whole years for a bank to foreclose on you. And during those 2 years, get your life back in order. You could figure out what your passion is. You could learn skills. You could start making money. Maybe you'll even start paying off the mortgage on your house again. Who knows? But you can get your life together without the most people pay a third of their income or more on their house mortgage. So this will save you. You'll save, in those 2 years, you'll save almost a year's worth of living expenses by not paying down your mortgage. And I think that's a great idea. If you're in financial stress or if you're confused about your life, your credit rating will go to hell, but you can hire credit agencies to boost up your credit rating again. Or I'm not so sure credit ratings are going to matter that much, because what if you never, my credit score is never checked because I used to live in Airbnbs, and if you're living in an Airbnb, they don't check your credit. So I think credit ratings are going to go less in importance. So that's housing loans. If you're in financial stress, do not pay them back. Let's say you owe the IRS money. The IRS, you do need to pay back. So what you do is, if you owe the IRS money, you proactively call the IRS. Be very proactive about it. Right now, don't forget, right now, the IRS, the tax day has been postponed from April till I think August. So the IRS is more than happy to get your proactive call. And if you get on the phone with them and say, hey, I want to pay my debt and I'm being proactive and I want to work out a payment plan. Let's say you owe $100,000. So you can say, look, I can't pay $100,000, but how about I pay $500 a month for 3 years, and then I'll pay a balloon payment in 3 years. I'll pay off the rest in 3 years. They're going to say yes, because they're happy that you called them. And then in 3 years, you either pay back that balloon payment or you negotiate again. So now we just dealt with housing loans. We dealt with IRS debt. What about student loans? Well, again, student loans, right now there's forbearance in the stimulus package. You don't have to pay the student loans during this period. But student loans, if you don't pay them back, this is the one kind of loan where the government will garnish your wages, and you can't even get rid of a student loan in bankruptcy. So I have several family members who went bankrupt to avoid paying off their student loans, and that worked, but it doesn't work anymore. They made that against the law. But here's what you can do. Don't get a job. Or if you get a job, do your job through a company, and then the student loans don't know where to seize your assets. They don't know your company has the job. Your company has the bank account. You could have a little bank account, put a little money in it, the student loan company will take out the money, but you can't really get rid of student debt. You could try to renegotiate it, but what I would do is start getting paid through a company, and then how are they going to garnish wages? They don't know where you are. So we dealt with housing debt, IRS debt, student loan debt, credit card debt I've talked about in the past. But this is a great, I'll start with, right, I agree, Cody, I agree. Housing is a scam. Let me just address the scams first. Housing is a scam. Why would, Fannie Mae, which does all the student loan debts, they back all the student loan debts, not student loan, they back all the housing mortgages. Their slogan was, the American dream, because they thought the American dream was the suburban, white picket house, blah, blah, blah. They sold us this vision of the American dream, buy a house, because they were going to make money. Don't forget how a bank, this is the only way a bank makes money. A bank borrows money from you. When you open up a savings account, you're really lending money to the bank, and they're paying you 0.3% interest or less. They're paying you nothing. Then they take your money. Don't forget, when you open up a bank account, that money is the bank's now. Now they will lend it to Robin to buy a house. And they charge Robin 5% interest. So they're paying you 0.5% interest. They're lending to Robin 5% interest. The 4.5% in between, that is 100% of the bank's profits. So the more people who buy houses, the better it is for the banks. This is the entire business model of a multi-trillion-dollar industry, an industry we bailed out with trillions of dollars in 2009. Their entire model is to sell you on the BS of buying a house. Now, if you buy a house as a home and you want stability, I'm not arguing with you. I don't want to argue about whether you enjoy owning a house or not. Just the financials, you can't say you're buying it as an investment. Yes, I know your parents bought a house in 1950. They made $3 million on it when they sold it in 2003. Everybody's got an anecdote, but anecdotes are not the same thing as reality. Anecdote is just your imagination at work. So housing's a scam. College is a scam. We've talked about it before, but it's too expensive. It doesn't take 4 years to learn a skill. It's not reliable because they could just send all the kids home and not give them any money back. They're criminals, just the way Harvard tried to borrow $9 million from your taxpayer money, even though they have $41 billion in the bank. And it doesn't teach you social skills. Everyone says, oh, college teaches you social skills. No, it doesn't. I can tell you this. After you leave college, you're never going to ever again for the rest of your life have a situation where most of your friends are your exact same age. So you don't actually learn social skills until after you graduate college. And believe me, so I have one 21-year-old daughter who thankfully followed my advice a year ago. She was going to college. She dropped out to pursue her skills. She's learned much more since she dropped out. She's social. She's had friends, boyfriends, roommates, friends of all ages. Just because you're not on a college campus doesn't mean a kid 18 to 22 years old is not going to be social. Like, college is not what makes you social. Being 18 makes you social. So don't give me that BS argument. And credit cards are a scam. Why are they giving credit cards to 18-year-olds and charging 19% interest? Students now are getting into so much credit card debt, student loan debt. Their lives are ruined by the time they're 23 years old. It used to be our best and brightest would go to Silicon Valley, invent, a VR device or the internet or whatever. Now they're working as cashiers at McDonald's to pay down all this debt. So that's why I'm telling you, don't pay credit card debt. So here's the thing with credit card debt. If you owe the money for 90 days, then the bank writes you off. It says, okay, James is not paying his credit card debt anymore. They sell your debt to a hedge fund for 4 cents on the dollar. So if I owed $1,000, they would sell my debt. So instead of getting zero, like let's say they just assume I'm not paying. So they say James is not going to pay anything. So rather than get zero, let's sell James's $1,000 debt to a hedge fund for $40. So at least we get $40 from James. Now the hedge fund owns my $1,000 debt, and they own it for just $40. So they call me up, and they get a very deep voice and a masculine name, like, this is Dick Strong. We want you to know that you're about to go to court in 12 days unless you pay back the $1,000 credit card debt you owe your Visa. And everybody gets scared and pays the money. By the way, if they only collect $80 or $50 from you, they make $80, they double the money they spent on your debt. So here's what the hedge fund usually does. The hedge fund, they buy what's called a portfolio of debt from the bank. I know this, by the way, because I used to do this, or I used to invest in hedge funds that would do this. So I made money this way. So a hedge fund will buy a portfolio of credit card debt. Oh, here's debt from North Carolina, West Virginia, Kentucky, New Jersey, New York. These are men age 18 to 45. Here's all their jobs. And they use AI to analyze portfolios of debt to see which debt has the best value. So they do value investing on portfolios of credit card debt. They buy the best portfolios they can find. Then they go to each state and hire a lawyer in each state to start collecting from you and potentially take you to court. But if you just offer, like if the collection agency calls you at that point, first off, I would ignore them for as long as you want until you get a court date or whatever, which may never happen. If you do pick up, here's what I would say. Here's what I've said. I need to see paper documentation of the debt. I don't remember this. And so most of the time, because the bank has already written you off, the hedge funds and then the lawyers they hire don't have paperwork on your debt. And so, oh my God, it's 45 minutes away. The hedge funds don't have the paperwork on your debt. So then they won't pursue you anymore. Or you could just say, hey, I owed $1,000. What if I send you $45 right now? They'll take it because they just made money. So they're happy. So that's credit card. So we talked about credit card debt, friend debt, student loan debt, housing debt, IRS debt. The only debt you should pay back, of course, is the debt with your friends. That's ethical. Everything else is a contract, and it's important that you understand that. They'll try to make it seem like you're unethical. You're not unethical. You have a contract with the bank, with the credit cards, with the IRS, with your student loans, and so on. So when there's a contract, it's not ethical, it's contractual. Whenever there's a contract, it's not ethics. So as long as you don't try to beat the contract. Jay, let's see another question. Thoughts on buying another country? Yes. So, let me see. Does anybody trust Wall Street? Actually, so I'm going to talk about Wall Street for 1 second and trusting it. I think you should trust Wall Street. First off, one time I was invested in 12 hedge funds. 12. 10 of them were scams. And I shut down my business because I realized, and I was scared. I had nightmares every night. I realized how many scams I was invested in. I was even afraid for my life, like in one case. But so many hedge funds are scams on Wall Street. And all of the banks, all of the investment banks and all of the banks are criminals in every possible way. I do not trust them. I could tell you story after story, but we don't have time. But I can tell thousands of stories about scams on Wall Street. The only issue is that companies, mom and pop companies, raise money from Wall Street, and that in turn is used to develop products, to hire jobs, to get the wheels of the economy rolling. It's almost like the economy pays a little fee for all the scams, but overall, 98% of the economy is running right now and is huge, and this is the biggest economy ever because we have the most sophisticated financial system. So there is good things about Wall Street. It's just I don't trust any one person on Wall Street, but I trust the system. So I have so like you bring up the question of Enron. So Enron was a scam. And by the way, it's actually questionable whether Enron was a scam. Let's not forget AOL was actually a scam also, but the market was going up, so AOL got away with it, and WorldCom and Enron didn't get away with it because the stock market was going down. So when the stock market's going up, all the criminals, including Bernie Madoff, get away with it. But when the stock market's going down, nobody gets away with it. So it's hard to identify one scam, but I have stories. I even have Enron stories, and I have Madoff stories, and I have WorldCom stories. The ex-chief financial officer of WorldCom, who I think ended up in jail, was an investor in my hedge fund. And I didn't give him his money back for a long time because he was in jail. But that said, I have another writing challenge. So the last time I gave you the 30-day book challenge, it was to do some academic research, whatever. Now I have a book challenge. I'm calling it the 101 challenge. So I'm gonna have a drink of water. The 101 challenge. So pick the thing you're most interested in life. Let's say you're interested in presidents or golf or football or parenting or entrepreneurship. So let's take entrepreneurship. Now, every day, I want you to research and write, and it shouldn't take you more than a half hour, 10 things that are insane about entrepreneurship that you never knew before. So now you guys know this, but not everyone knows this. The average multimillionaire has, according to the IRS, so this is real data at the IRS, the average multimillionaire in the United States has 7 different sources of income. So that's an interesting fact. And now, then another interesting fact. I'm gonna look this one up just to make sure I get all the numbers right. Where is it? Okay. Okay. You know how everybody says 90% of startups fail? You know, like if you want to start a business, people tell you, oh, well, 9 out of 10 startups fail, so you better not do that. Everyone is so kind and nice to give you advice when you're trying to make yourself better. Have you ever noticed that? Everyone says, no, you shouldn't. You might hurt yourself if you start jogging. Or, don't start a business because 9 out of 10 businesses fail. Well, guess what? It's false. According to the Small Business Administration, only 3 out of 10 businesses fail. So that's very important to know. And most people don't know that statistic. They think 9 out of 10 businesses fail because all of their nice friends and their mom tell them, James, don't start a business. 9 out of 10 businesses fail. It is just not true. Only 3 out of 10 businesses fail. And I bet you there's reasons those businesses fail. They take on too much debt or they take on investment. But if the best way to start a business is to buy an existing business. And I can talk more about that in another podcast. But if you buy an already existing profitable business, chances are 1 out of 10 businesses fail or even less. So there's a lot of ways to reduce your risk. So anyway, the 101 challenge, come up with pick a topic. I just picked entrepreneurship, but you could pick anything. And every day for 10 days, write 10 unusual things that nobody knows about that topic, like 101 crazy things you didn't know about entrepreneurship. When you have 101, and so 10 days, on the 10th day, make 11. And then once you have 101, explain the concept like, okay, so here's what the IRS says about different sources of income. Here are 10 possible sources of income. And here's a story of Richard Branson, who became a billionaire because he had multiple sources of income. He owned a music magazine. He owned a record label. He started a record store. He started an airline. So Richard Branson had multiple sources of income. Tyra Banks, who we just talked about, she had a modeling career. She was a spokesperson for companies. She started a TV show. There was a merchandising for the TV show. So she had multiple sources of income, became an almost billionaire. Kanye West, makes music, is a music producer. But then he started selling shoes and other clothes. And he married someone who had sex on video. By the way, Ray J coming on my podcast tomorrow. Happy for that. And let's say, okay, politics or the government. Here's an interesting fact. Do you know that whenever a president of the United States visits New York City, they have to stay, not Trump, but everyone else has to stay at the Waldorf Astoria? Because underneath the Waldorf Astoria, there are all these secret caves and passages so that if there's an attack, the president can get to safety. And I've stayed in the President's Suite in the Waldorf Astoria. Let me tell you something. That is an amazing hotel suite to stay in. That was a story all by itself. So that one could be called 101 Secrets the U.S. Government is Keeping from You. So, did you know the U.S. Virgin Islands only has a 3% tax rate, not a 39% tax rate? 101 Strange Ways to Be Happier. So let's say midday, you're feeling a little down. Did you know that if you just say E for a minute, it contorts your facial muscles so that in the same way that a smile does, and saying E for a straight minute, your mind thinks you're smiling, and so it starts to release dopamine, and you become happier. So 101 strange things you didn't know about happiness. And then you tell a story. You talk about, the research or the proof. So you list every chapter, you list a strange thing, and then you talk about how you know why this is a fact, and then you tell a story or two. Within 30 days, the first 10 days, you come up with your 101 items. The next 20 days, you just write every day, pick, 3 or 4 of the things you wrote down and write a little story. And then boom, in a month, you go to 99 Designs, you get a cover designed, you upload it to Amazon. I'll talk about Amazon more tomorrow, why you should self-publish tomorrow, and you can write your book. Now, why is it 101? Well, first off, it turns out odd numbers people click on more than they click on even numbers. I don't know why. But listicles are popular. Everyone always makes fun of listicles, but listicles, throughout history, listicles are popular. The 10 Commandments, the 195 Yoga Sutras, the Eightfold Path, the Four Noble Truths, and then even recently, the 48 Laws of Power, the 4 Agreements, the 4-Hour Work Week. So that's not a listicle, but people like numbers. So listicles are good. If you're a starting writer and you're writing a nonfiction book and you're doing one of these 30-day book challenges, this is the second book challenge I've given you. Do a listicle because more people will buy the book. Anyone who's searching for entrepreneurship, if they have 2 choices, how to be a better entrepreneur or 101 fascinating things you didn't know about entrepreneurship, you're going to buy the listicle instead of the How to Be an Entrepreneur. It's just a better title. So the 4 Agreements was a great book, and Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz is a great book as well. So what's another topic there? I will tell you. I talked about strange ways to be happier, the 100 secrets the government is keeping from you, 101 things you need to know about entrepreneurship. You could also do what I was just talking about with loans, 101 crazy ways to get out of debt. Boom. People are going to buy that book. They're not going to spend a lot of money for that book, but they're going to buy it. You know what? Also, do the 21 rights the Constitution left out. Boom. I'd buy that book right now. I'm interested in it. So it doesn't have to be 101 either. Make it 51. I just like the number 101. I think that's like a big enough number. People will think, 101 things I don't know about entrepreneurship. I'm going to check this out. 101 things I don't know about football. I'm going to check this out. The 101 best writers of all time. I'm going to check that out. So pick your category and boom, as Catherine says, boom, write a book in 30 days. That's your second 30-day book challenge. Please do it. Anybody who writes books with one of these challenges, I will tweet about it. I will mention it on Facebook. I will mention it in these Instagram lives. You guys are heroes if you do it. We've got a few minutes left. I decided I'm gonna write a book. So I just finished the book and I sent it to the publisher, and she's supposed to send it back to me on Wednesday for a final set of rewrites. I'm hoping, knocking on wood, that she doesn't have too many changes. But I want to write a romance novel for Harlequin. And here, 101 things to do during a divorce. That is a kick-ass idea. Ben, you need to write that book, Ben. 101 things to do during a divorce. Having been divorced twice, I'll help you out with that book. Say the challenge again in writing a book. Tomorrow I will summarize the book challenges because we only have a few minutes now. But here's my idea. Tell me if you like this idea. I'm going to look for the hearts. I want to write a Harlequin romance novel. So A Harlequin romance novel is 50,000 words, which is about, I don't know, 160, 170 pages. Here's my idea. It's called Quarantine Love. And the heroine, how do you say it? Heroine or heroine? She's agoraphobic. She's afraid to leave her house, and she's a germaphobe as well. And so she's at her house, and she needs a handyman or whatever. She gets a handyman come over, and then all of a sudden it's announced that a massively lethal, fatal disease is in their city, and nobody can leave. And this guy has a kid at home, and she's happy because she was never going to leave anyway, but she doesn't want to be stuck with this annoying handyman in the house, and he doesn't want to be stuck with her because she's a germaphobe, agoraphobe, and she's annoying, and he's got his kid at home, and blah, blah, blah. And so first they annoy each other, then they start to fall in love, then she realizes he's married, but there's extenuating circumstances, of course, and now the kid gets the disease. He's afraid to go out in the pandemic, and she, going against her agoraphobia and germophobia, she goes, rescues the kid, brings the kid to the hospital, and then she gets sick, and boom, boom, boom. Of course, she lives, but that's the skeleton of Quarantine Love, the Harlequin romance that I'm about to start writing. And now I got to hold myself accountable because now you've all heard it. Pilot twist zombies. Okay, let me tell you something. You took another idea, which I'm happy to share. Here's an idea I have for an exercise business, which I think somebody should do. It's called zombie exercise or zombie apocalypse exercise. And it's a real exercise. You have a park that's limited in scope. Maybe it's like a school park or whatever. And 10 people are in your class, and you have maybe 1 or 2 zombies, and the zombies have to chase everybody, and it's like tag, but you're zombies, and everybody has to run away from you as much as possible. So sometimes it'll be like interval training. Sometimes they have to run away from you in short sprints, and then you'll go chasing another person. Other times it's like a marathon because you're chasing them for a long time. The zombie trainer is chasing them for a long time. So it's fun. It's a game. You get interval training. You get, what is it called? Cardio exercise. So zombie training, boom, exercise class, post-pandemic, but kind of has a pandemic style theme. And so let's see. I think I have time for one more question. Thoughts on pursuing, let me see. Do I have to notify my mortgage company I'm having financial issues? No. But why don't you do that anyway and listen to this earlier thing about why you should avoid, or how you could avoid your mortgage debt. And I'll give you some ideas on negotiation tomorrow if you're negotiating with your mortgage company. And I'm going to take the tips from Chris Voss. I'm going to contact Chris Voss, ask him. He was the former lead hostage negotiator for the FBI, and I will get his tips on negotiating a mortgage for tomorrow. Another quick question. Will I ever buy another country try to buy another country the way I tried to buy Greenland? I've been interested in going to small countries like Tonga or San Marino and buying their UN vote, but we'll see. We'll see if I can do that. I've been trying. I almost did that. I tried to do that in Turks and Caicos the last time I was there, but the prime minister was willing to see me, but only got back to me as I was getting on the airplane, so I couldn't meet with her. Anyway, 101 things to do after a pandemic. Boom, great idea. Finish that in the next 30 days. So, why New York is in bankruptcy? I'll answer it tomorrow. I have 42 seconds left, and I will put this IG story. I will put this in IG stories under the live, and I will save this on YouTube. And good luck, everybody. We covered so many fun issues, and I will see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you then.